So in this video, we'll be taking a look at the robotBuilder interface, and it's important that you become comfortable with finding your way around here because later on when it comes time to do your modeling, you'll be able to be that much more productive because you'll know where everything is. So if you're interested in following along with me, I've included the project file for this exercise, and it's called interface.rbproj. So if you open it up, let's take a look and see what's going on here. So I think the very first thing you'll notice upon opening robotBuilder is that it makes use of a very similar Windows-based interface that we would find on a lot of other programs. So for example, this file menu, if I click on it, gives me options to create a new project, open up an existing project, close and save my work, a list of all the recent files I've been working on. I can even edit my user preferences from here. The edit menu contains the familiar cut, copy, paste, undo, and redo functions. Let's take a look at this view menu because we'll be spending a lot of time here. The view menu gives me quick access to many of the tool palettes that I'll need to do my modeling. You'll note that there's these check marks beside some of these menu items, and that's really just a visual aid to let me know that that particular menu item is on screen. So if I click on toolbars and deselect it and come back to it, we'll notice that check mark is gone. If I enable it again, the check mark will come back and the toolbar will reappear. So the toolbar is a good place to start off, and the reason for that is because it contains shortcuts to many of the most common functions in robotBuilder. Roughly speaking, the toolbar is divided into 5 functional areas. So you have file management's the first area, and here I can create a new project, open an existing project, or save my work. Beside it is the undo and redo pane. Most of us have seen that before. Now here's an interesting thing. When it comes time to do object modeling, we can do it from the simulator control. So for example, if I hit play, I kick off the simulator and I can start doing testing. I'll just click the stop and reset button here. And so hitting this play button engages robotBuilder's physics engine, right? So if I wanted to see the effects of things like gravity or drag or how two objects will react in a collision, this is where I'm going to do my testing from. So again, I can demonstrate it by hitting play. When I hit this button, gravity takes into effect and my chair tumbles through 3-dimensional space. Beside it is the object manipulation pane. And the object manipulation pane basically allows us to position, rotate, and scale any model geometry we might have in our scene. So clicking on the move tool, which is this hand, allows me to pan my camera from left to right, down, and I'm going to pan up. I can zoom in and out from my model by using the middle mouse scroll wheel. I can pivot my camera angle by using my shift key and my right mouse button and holding them simultaneously and dragging. So if I want to pivot to the left, I can see what's going on over there. I can pivot my camera angle to the right. I can click on this move object tool that looks like a pair of 3D coordinates. I'll give it a click, select my object that I want to manipulate, and I get this pair of 3-dimensional axes. If I click on Y, we notice that it highlights, so your selected axis will always be yellow. So if I click on X, it will highlight yellow, and click here on Z and it highlights yellow. And basically once I've picked an axis, I just need to drag my mouse in the desired direction. So here I can move my mouse along Y, can move my mouse along X. I can push this chair, bring it towards me rather, push it away from me. I can click on this rotational tool and it works very much the same way. Selected axis highlights yellow, and now I'm rotating this chair along its y-axis. I can just as well highlight it along the z-axis. Beside it is the scale object button, and again, axis highlights, and I can scale my model along those dimensions. If I want to perform a uniform scale, I just need to hold down the left mouse button and the shift key at the same time and pick an axis. So in this case, I'm uniformly scaling my object along the y-axis. Beside it is the camera split views, and the default is to be in this single pane view, but for modeling purposes I may find it more convenient to be in a split screen. And the cool thing about this is that the changes I make to my object in one pane will reflect in the other. So you may find this to be a handy tool to use when you're modeling more complex geometry. If I need to adjust any of my camera view settings, I can click on the camera view settings toolbar, and here I can go to any number of different view presets. So for example, if I want to see what this chair looks like from the back, from the left, how this thing looks from the right, from the top, and from the bottom. And I'm just going to go back to a front orientation. And you can see how changes in your camera on one pane don't affect the other panes. So rotating, scaling, and positioning your object will be reflected across panes, but camera manipulation won't. So it can be a really useful tool. In this particular case, in this right pane, I might want to zoom in with my middle mouse scroll wheel. I may want to carve my screen up into quadrants, so if I need more views, it can certainly be arranged. Some people find this perspective a little cluttered. Others really like it because it gives them a bunch of different working angles to approach their model from. If you're one of the few people out there that thinks that this looks cluttered, we can go back to a single mouse view, right click on the main camera tab here, and I can attach other cameras and work in this tabbed styled environment. So within each camera tab, I can pivot position my cameras or go to a view preset if I need to work from a particular perspective. And again, each camera is independent from the other tabs. So I'm going to close this up for a second, and we're going to move on and take a look at the project browser. If I click View and go down to Project Explorer, I open up the Project Explorer window. And really what the Project Explorer window is it's just a container for other objects, and so things like custom scripts that I may have developed for my model, meshes, textures, any other kinds of resources. It's basically a file folder that keeps our project organized. I can stretch and resize it if I need it to be bigger or a little longer. The other cool thing in this edition of robotBuilder is that I can dock my menus to the side of my screen, and for some people you might find that a useful feature. And now no matter what I do in the model space, I can keep that menu open. So the next thing I want to show you is the Objects menu. And the Objects menu, I'm just going to dock it here. The Objects menu contains a whole whack of pre-built models that you can readily use. So for example, this office chair that we've been using, I pulled this out of the Objects menu, and when I find something I want to use, like this chair, I simply left click on it. Say for example this coffee table, left click on it and drag and drop it out onto the grid. I can also drag and drop it into a hierarchy view window, and we'll take a look at that momentarily. So there's a whole whack of things in here. There's simple geometric shapes like this cone. There's a pile of generic robotic parts you can use like actuators, cameras, this accelerometer. There's even a couple of generic robots that are readily available. For example, this Lynx motion robot. If I click on it and drag it out, I can, well, let's see what these things are made of, because I talked earlier about the hierarchy view. Click on the view menu, go into hierarchy view. Now what the hierarchy view does is it basically outlines the relationship between objects in your model space. So if I had my move tool, my move button selected, and I click on these different objects, I can see that my model is comprised of a cone, a chair, this Lynx robot. If I expand the node here, I can see that there's this kind of parent-child nested relationship. So this Lynx robot is comprised of a chassis and 4 wheels, and each wheel is comprised of an axle and tire treads. So sometimes it can be really handy to model a more complex object as a set of subassemblies, and creating those kinds of parent-child relationships isn't difficult. If I wanted to parent this robot to the office chair, I simply left-click on it and drag and drop it onto the office chair, and now these two pieces of geometry will move together. So if I move this office chair, the links moves with it. If I rotate it, they rotate together. And in this way we can represent a more complex model as a collection of sub-assemblies. I'm just going to take a second and dock this window to the bottom. The very last thing in this view menu we're going to take a look at is the properties window. And although we can be reasonably accurate using the tool shortcuts, I sometimes prefer to work in this properties window because you can be very precise. So for example, the chair, if I wanted to move this to very precise coordinates, I can key in specific values or increment values using these arrows, and I can very precisely position this object in three-dimensional space. Now it's sometimes the case that you will lose your object, as I just did. I don't know where it is. And if that's the case, you'll simply will want to find your object and click on it and in the hierarchy view and hit the F key and you'll find it. F is a shortcut for find. So I'm just going to take this properties window and dock it to the side. And what we have here is sort of my preferred work environment. I like to be able to see my model space, but I also like to be able to have the ability to get very exact information and key in specific values. You might find this a little cluttered, so if you right click on these tabs, you can close these windows and come back to the default. The last thing I'll show you is where you can go for finding additional help. If you click on the help menu and select documentation, we have a very comprehensive set of instructions and step-by-step guides here. I've done my best to be as thorough as possible, but if you do need additional information, it can be found here. There's a number of really good tutorial videos, screenshots, and very detailed instructions should you need them. So hopefully that's enough to get you started with finding your way around robotBuilder.